Hello, it's Kieran here. Time for a video again. So this is from Cambridge 10, test number 3, academic writing task number 1. As you may know, we're covering all the Cambridge previous papers, academic writing tasks. We've done most of the essays and we're doing task 1 from 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11 and 10. So test number 3. So first things first, get me disclaimer, fair use, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so no complaints, please. What we're looking at is this one here from test number 3. Okay, the charts show what UK students, graduate and postgrad, did who did not go into full-time work after leaving college in 2008. Okay, so obviously, first things that we can see is that the category of further study is easily the largest one for both graduate and post-grad. Unemployment, remarkably, nearly identical in terms of size in comparison to the actual graph, not in terms of figures, because obviously that's a little bit larger. But if you look at the overall picture of the two graphs, if you lay them on top, voluntary work basically the same, further study basically the same, unemployment basically the same. The only difference really is in part-time work, but still you've got the biggest, the smallest, the second and the third, etc. So let's have a look. Okay, so we'll take a look at mine at first, then we'll take a look at 5 from my Telegram group, IELTS 9 Pro, who submitted responses. So this one's mine, 195 words. As I've said before, you shouldn't take more than a minute on your introduction. You simply restate in paraphrase. The charts illustrate what UK graduate and postgraduate students did, full-time being excluded, in 2008. Okay. Overview. Now, there's usually 2 or usually 3 key trends or features to identify. So here I say both tables show a lot of similarity in the destinations, in further study, unemployment, etc. While for both groups, further study was the most common, so that's the largest, and the least was working in the voluntary sector. So it's like I say, what's the biggest, what's the smallest, what's the same? That's what you do for your key features. Then, to make sense, look at chart 1, or table 1 first, graduates. So what's the biggest, but here, figures and details, So largest category, some figures, whereas part-time work showed some other figures, interestingly, voluntary work and some more figures and data. So I've started off at the biggest, working my way down to the smallest. Postgraduates, now here I'm doing comparisons with the graduates, because it says make comparisons where relevant, So let's have a look. Where are we? So as for postgrads, further studies show the highest, the same as with the grads, some figures. Part-time work, the same. However, there was a bit of a difference there. Unemployment, and finally, voluntary work. So it's pretty logical, really. It's the organisation part that you've got to get used to, So that's not too bad. I'll just leave that there. As you can see that. 195 words, as I said. So now let's take a look at yours. Well, it could be yours if you were one of the 5 whose entries I chose. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so we've got 5 here. We'll take a look at these. Now I might not correct every single mistake or error because I don't have the time, but let's see what we can do. So, the bar charts compare the working status. Well, it doesn't. because it shows the destination, where they, or what area, what they went into after. So it's not the working status, because it says full-time work excluded. So that doesn't really work. Overview. The exception of full-time works. Well, we're not including full-time work. It doesn't give you any figures for full-time work. So why would you mention that? Further studies and voluntary work. So at least that part is okay. Highest number of students for continuing their education. Voluntary work. So the number of students 5 times more. Voluntary work was fortunately. Now, unfortunately, why would you say that? How do you know if it was unfortunate or not? We don't want, well, IELTS don't want you to make any kind of supposition. So don't include that, because it's personal opinion. All that you need to do is the chart, graph, data, map, blah, 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 shows this. Not it shows this because. Okay? So, despite the fact, continues peaked again, 1/10 of its counterpart. Well, yeah, because the charts are different and record different things. So I wouldn't really put that. It's 1/10, because obviously, if you take a look at it, let me just get it back up here. Yeah, because there's more postgrads than graduates. You know, that's always the case. So it's not like it's a 10th. Well, yeah, it is, but that fact is irrelevant. You can't compare them, because it's not comparing like with kind of like. You know, you're always going to have more postgrads, masters, and PhDs than people doing bachelors, say. So we can't really make that comparison, I don't think. Same trend recorded, or was recorded. Involuntary works and play shoots. A number of these two groups experienced a plunge. Well, it can plunge, but you can't really experience a plunge. You can experience a drop, but you can't experience a plunge. Do significantly decrease. Okay, so not too bad, but still a little bit of a wording there, and some of the things I wouldn't really make comparisons with. Okay, the charts comparing again of type of work. Well, further study, as far as I'm aware, is not work. Ask any working person, is what students do work? And they'll say, of course it's not. So don't be using that. It's the destination. Where did they go afterwards? What's it say here? It says, right. So it shows what they did, not where they work. There's only part-time work and voluntary work. You've got unemployment, which is not work, and further study, the overwhelming majority. Again, that's not really work, is it? It can be seen from the charts. Most graduate students tended to pursue further study. Yeah, so that's the largest. Yeah. At the same time, between postgrads. Yeah, so that's basically identified. That's the biggest. That's the smallest in both of the groups. Okay. Highest proportion. Contribution part of 2/3 as high. A share of the unemployment category. Part-time jobs were small. Difference. Stood last among other types of jobs. Yeah, but voluntary work, it's not considered a job. I mean, I volunteer with different groups, helping them to learn, some English, but that's not, because it's not a paid position, it's not considered a job. It's a destination, it's a choice, but it's not a job as such. We need to be careful there. Among postgraduate students, further study had the largest share. Part-time jobs ranked second. Okay, so that's essentially, first, second, third, and fourth. Okay, and there's no real comparisons between the two groups, which is what I would make, and which I did. Following bar charts, those two don't have full-time job against college. Okay, yeah, good. Further study, most of them, both levels up from pattern. Now that's good. Yeah, that's pretty much the same as I said. I said, look, if you overlay these, in terms, figures aside, but in terms of proportion, it's virtually identical. So is very good. To begin with, well, you don't really need to say that. Just get started. It's not an essay. Okay. So that's simply a list: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, so that's like first, second, third, fourth. But there's no comparisons between the two. So there's kind of, you hint here that there is something that's comparable. As in, if you look at both 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's not taken any further in paragraph 3 or 4. So I would maybe make some comparisons there. Chart shows information. Well, it's destination. It's not work, is it? Who are not fully worked. Okay, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that one. Were by far higher than that of postgraduated. Notable points. Is it really a notable point? Least favoured activity. Is a least favoured activity. As much as so, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to make of that sentence there. Not who are not fully worked than that of postgraduate. Look at part-time work, ranked first as postgraduated and graduate students, respectively. Volunteer work and postgraduated was lower by. Well, it's not lower by. So if it was like, what's that? If it was like 690 and it was 345, it would be lower by that 345. So that's the actual kind of figure. It's not lower by that figure. Unemployment were roughly joint second. Contribution was 10 times as high. Well, it's just a difference in figures because there's less postgrads than graduates. So it's not a 10 times as kind of high, is it? It's not they did it 10 times more or they contributed 10 times more than someone else. So that's just not it. Okay, so 161 words. This should be the final one. Okay. Types of work. Further study. Is that work? It's destination. It's where they went to. I mean, look. Right. The charts below show what UK graduates who did not go into full-time work, what they did after. Yeah? So, further study, unemployment, that's not work, is it? I've done both, and I can tell you, that's not work. So, let's have a look. Okay, so again, it's got those two things. That's the biggest, that's the smallest. But again, you could have made that comparison. If you overlay, it's pretty similar. Turning to the details, so to start further education, to the other three. It's not work or works. Contrary. Well, it's usually to the contrary or conversely. But it's not conversely. How is that? So we use that when we're indicating a direct opposite in contrast. So it's not conversely, it's not that was contrary, and if using contrary, that's usually when you've got a different opinion, an opposite. So you can use it like in an essay. Contrary to this, I think that, he said this, contrary to, etc. So conversely, you can't really use that either, because it's like that was the biggest and that was the smallest. Well, it's not two different aspects of the same, it's two different aspects. So it can't be conversely or contrary as such, can it? If you were comparing graduate and postgraduates, then in contrary to this, in comparison to that, conversely, you could use it. But only if you were comparing two different things. But here, it's just a list. It's just first, second, third, fourth. So we can't really use it there. Okay, figures and data, rough same patterns. No, okay, now. Excellent point. Okay, I would have put that in the overview. Significantly more of the other two groups, Southern Point students, third place, equated with others, similar to that which graduate students did, or were, or went. Okay, so that last sentence doesn't really work either. So, in general, that's it, I think. Not too bad. So, introductory sentence is pretty easy. You should be able to do that like in a minute, you know. The bar charts, illustrate, show this and this, it's in this year, it includes this, etc. Overview, right? Clearly identify, as I said. These two, if you overlay them, it's pretty kind of similar. That's the biggest, that's the smallest. That's what I would have done, well, which I did. Those three key trends and features. Then do your graduates, do your postgrads, but some comparisons. Okay, you need to be comparing the two different groups, not making comparisons within the same group, because that doesn't kind of work. Okay, so not too bad, not too bad. I'll just put mine up one last time and just leave it there for you to look at. Okay, so I'm going to be posting, actually I think it is posted now, so if you go down to the bottom, the link is in the description of our group on Telegram. Yeah, Cambridge 10 Test 4. I think it's a life cycle of the salmon. I'm going to be writing a sample and making a video for that later. So, not too bad. I hope that gives you some ideas. I hope it helps. Right then, I'll see you next time for Cam 10 Test 4, okay, which is the process question. Okay, I'll see you then. Bye for now.